Students for life, abortion.
Where this is going well.
The topic you've been waiting for.
The topic you've been waiting that you never talk about, you never hear about. Abortion.
That's the hard thing. We don't want to just not talk about abortion, but it does feel like one of those things that it feels like you just have the flashcards of all the arguments everybody's
all
already
the talking
had.
Points. My body, my choice.
Yeah.
And then you respond with
a life is sacred.
And then I respond with anyway, this is Kristan.
And then Kristan Hawkins responds with what's your flashcard, Kristan Hawkins?
Abortion is violence, and it's the greatest human rights threat our world faces. There's
silence is violence.
Try to keep it to 3-4 words, please.
Oh, sorry.
Flashcard.
Yeah, we're talking flashcard size here.
Yeah, because that's the air you breathe, right? The abortion debate, or do you get into the debate anymore very much?
It's hard because, to be honest with you, they don't really like to debate. I actually just did a debate, which I didn't know was the debate, with an abortionist and a pro-choice theologian for a med school group, a Christian med school group in New York State at CUNY a couple weeks ago. And that was really fun, but it was a Christian event, so I wasn't allowed to debate. I had to be nice and allow for discussion. So I had to allow them to say their ridiculous things, and then I had to wait, a good amount of time to then call them on their
flower bed.
So that was a little difficult for me, but it was fun.
Huh. Yeah, you get I assume students for life. When I think of students, especially, are we talking like college students?
We're talking college, med,
students?
law, high school, and even some middle school students now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But especially college age, I don't think. I think not so much for life. And also like really angry about it.
They don't
the
like
ones that are anti are very passionate, right? So,
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely, the pro-lifers are way more vocal than the pro-abortion students. Overall, with the polling we've done and the conversations we have on campuses, we had like 225,000 conversations last year with students about abortion. Overall, they don't like abortion, so they're not going to poll themselves as pro-life, and they would call themselves more pro-choice. But then they don't actually know what pro-choice is. And the majority of them would say they don't like abortion. They wouldn't have an abortion, but they're not comfortable being in the pro-life camp. So it's actually, for us, it's more of a brand issue.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's amazing how many people I think even would just dial the laws back, right? To like, but we're in this, the culture is so extreme right now. Jump way over here. Mainly, I was asking that question because I wanted to hear any crazy stories where...
what's your coolest story? Give us your best story.
Where people are like, hey, you pro-lifers, and they throw like a bucket of blood at you or something.
We get crazy stories. Ever since President Trump was elected, actually, you can see a statistically increase, in the number of vandalizations and the lawsuits we've had to wage on campuses. But as things get closer to the election, it's going to get more intense. Actually, my last campus, I was on a college campus right before coronavirus struck and shut us down. I was at Cal Poly, and I actually had my first parade against me. And I had this big banner behind me and it said, "Make abortion illegal again." And I went before my evening speech, and the goal was to drum up some interest in my speech that night. Because normally, kids no one wants to talk about abortion. So you kind of have to like bait people into coming. And so I had this banner, and I was just walking to people trying to have a conversation with them about abortion. We were filming it. But then, they came out and had this like whole protest and surrounded me and had their chants. And I had about 2 hours worth of dialogue and people screaming in my face and calling me every name in the book. But it was actually a lot of fun and it raised us a lot of money. So it worked out really well for me.
Have you ever had a brick thrown at you?
No. I mean, we had students praying actually during the coronavirus out in Bellingham, Washington, who had a mysterious substance thrown on them. It got pretty hairy. They were leading the 40 Days for Life effort. And
the substance was hairy, or the situation was hairy?
The situation was very scary. They had several people
I thought you said hairy. Sorry.
Yeah, we had one student got punched in the face. They had a Satanist come start screaming "Hail Satan" from her car, and then she ended up like cyberbullying them for 2 months. And then they threw some substance on them. We had to call the police, and they had to investigate. It it was probably the most intense activism we've ever seen from the pro-abortion movement. And this was, in March during kind of the coronavirus shutdowns and all of those things. I think it's important, and I have a challenge sometimes of not telling all these horrible stories because I don't want to have folks not get involved in the pro-life movement, because we need more people to be willing to speak out, be courageous. But then it's important to tell them because it helps us drive supporters and say, hey, like, come support these students. Like, we need to empower them and give them the resources we need. And it also there's a certain segment of people who go, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I do need to actually stand up and say something. So I try not to dwell on the negative too much, because overall the positive is what we see is that we're winning. But yes, there are those insane, crazy stories that we sadly have.
So what does Students for Life do? Like, what's it actually look like when you guys all get together? And
sure.
I assume there's like meetings or whatever. Just what is it?
Potlucks.
Potlucks, yeah, you know us.
That kind of thing.
No, we started about 15 years ago. This is my 15th year. We modeled the organization off of a political campaign of going to campuses and not waiting for pro-life students to find us, but finding them and helping them start chapters. So we serve about 1,250 chapters in all 50 states. And we work so we've got about 50 full-time folks spread out across the country in all the regions. And we work with those Students for Life chapters to either start new groups or to mentor and support our existing ones to host events. So they're hosting educational events on their campus because we know this is the generation. I mean, this is the age group that's most targeted by the abortion industry for their predatory business. And so they're trying to, change the minds of their peers. But at the same time, they're also trying to help women who are right there in crisis on their campus. So they're attempting to change policies. So we have a program called Pregnant on Campus. And that's a huge thing of what our Students for Life groups do is actually try to change the policies on our college campuses, even our Christian campuses, to support pregnant parenting women and men. So no one ever feels like they have to choose between the life of their child and their education.
All right. So you guys want to make college students be pro-life that weren't. You want to convert people.
Absolutely.
Right? To the position. So, I mean, what are some good success stories you guys have with them?
Yeah.
Crazy pink-haired lady.
Yeah, is it even working?
Pink-haired lady, it's kill all the babies. And then now they're
save the babies.
Save the babies.
Yeah. And actually, we have a lot of those folks who end up working for us. The folks that convert, who are the hardcore pro-abortion atheist students who came into the pro-life movement, who were challenged, met somebody on their campus who started having a conversation with them. We kind of have an evangelical model of, it's the strategy is belong, believe, behave on campuses, where we want to invite students in, and you don't have to agree with us to come to our club meetings or to our events, but we want to invite you in, and we want you to hopefully give the pro-life movement a second look, because as I mentioned earlier, there is a certain, even in the evangelical Christian world, you have this certain I don't know if I want to be associated with those pro-lifers, and so we have to invite people in to give a second look, because once we know people start to form and have a relationship with a pro-lifer in their life, they're probably going to be a lot more likely to actually listen to the words that come out of their mouth. So we do have a lot of great conversions over the years of pro-choice young people that we've met on campus, who then later become the president of the group and then sometimes end up working for us. So there's a lot of fun stories out there.
What about you? Do you have a conversion story to the pro-life side, or were you always?
I was raised in a pro-life home. I started working at a pregnancy center. I was asked to volunteer at a women's center when I was 15 from a woman at my church. And I didn't really know it was a pro-life crisis pregnancy center. And if you would have asked me then how it was an abortion, I would have been like, well, I think it's wrong, but in certain cases, like this case or this case. So I was pretty much mushy middle is how we identify kind of pro-choice. But then I walked into that pregnancy center and really got to meet the women who were directly facing this issue, and really meet women, especially who had gone through one or two abortions previously, and how really learning firsthand how it didn't take them out of poverty. It didn't solve that problem. It didn't end the abusive relationship that they were in. It only exacerbated it, and in a lot of cases prolonged those issues that they were having. So that was the summer I was 15, where I just remember, going, oh my gosh, like, why aren't we talking about this at my church? Why aren't we talking about this at my school? Like, this big thing is happening, like thousands of people are dying every single day, yet no one I know is actually talking about, we need to do something about this.
The strange argument that a child being born poor means they shouldn't live. Mm-hmm. That seems to be because you were just talking about, their life is so much better if they just didn't have the kid. Mm-hmm. It's never said that. It's just so many poor people have children and they're fine. I grew up poor, very poor, low income housing. My dad was homeless. My mom could have aborted us. She probably would have, gotten to follow her dancing career or whatever she's trying to do. But
she would have won an Academy Award.
Yeah, maybe she should have won an Academy Award. She could have
Golden Globe.
And we would have been like, "Oh, so glad you killed us, Mom. Thank you." But what would you say is the most convincing argument that brings people over to your side? I guess that's where that would lead to.
Yeah, for students especially. Yeah,
for the pink-haired girl.
You have to put yourself more into a mindset of a liberal-leaning college student. So it's actually very hard for me to do because I'm a very politically conservative person. So that's why I actually have a lot of political liberals on my staff who are they're the best converters that I have. These are people who can talk and they're processing the same way as somebody else on campus does. And they convince them, I think, at a higher, I know this from our stats, from our conversions, they have higher conversion statistics than our conservatives on staff because they speak their language. What we're really finding is that on campuses, we talk a lot about violence and we talk about human rights and how this is unjust. This isn't fair. That these are members of our family, our human family, that science can't deny, right? Science is definitive that these preborn children are human beings. We know that they're alive. Now, granted, I hear stupid arguments all day long with people saying it's not a human, it's not alive. And those are just scientifically inaccurate statements, right? So if you're talking to a thinking person, they have to agree with you that that what's inside of his or her mother is a human being and it is alive. And that if abortionist is successful, think about it this way. If an abortionist only knows success, if a heart that was beating is now stopped, that's what happens in every single abortion. A beating heart stops. And it's a violent act. It's not a natural act. And that's what really gets a lot of students thinking because they get it, right? They've seen the ultrasounds of their brothers and sisters. They know what's inside. There was actually a really great article in The Guardian last month. It's a pro-choice, very pro-choice leaning, British newspaper. And they were actually blaming the state of disarray in the pro-abortion movement because of Planned Parenthood's outdated rhetoric, because they're still trying to use this. It's a blob of tissue. Abortion's like having a tooth removed. Like, it doesn't make sense. To a thinking young person, they're like, we all know abortion is greater than that. So talking about violence, talking about justice and fairness, talking about discrimination. We're going to have this conversation about Black Lives Mattering, which they absolutely do. Well, then if you believe all Black Lives Matter, then preborn Black Lives Matter have to matter, right? And then that really gets a conversation going.